Pick Up the Six is sponsored by Mudgear. Mudgear serves the unleashed with gear for the modern hybrid athlete that's made tougher. They've created strong, functional performance gear like their performance shirts, shorts, and socks. I wear Mudgear on the regular. Whether it's for a road race, an obstacle adventure, or a ruck, Mudgear can help you gear up for extreme performance. Go to mudgear.com, use the code PUT6, and save 15% off today. Amino Vital is on a mission to provide the highest quality amino acid-based nutritional products to all athletes aspiring to improve their conditioning and performance. They are a partner of our efforts here at Pick Up the Six, and I use their product before, during, and after workouts. They offer the purest and highest quality of amino acid products that help hydration and recovery. Check them out at amino-vital.com and use the code PUT6 to save 20% off today. We first met Dan Skidmore back on episode 93 of Pick Up the Six podcast, and we've been overdue to sit down with him again. Dan was a special operator in the Air Force, and he has a passion for doing hard stuff while also living life to the fullest. He recently teamed up with 3 other buddies on the Morocco Monkey Run, an adventure that he shares with us, plus his views on training, fitness, and building a bulletproof version of yourself. This is a fun conversation. Can't wait to share it with you. I'm Brian Jodice, and this is Pick Up the Six. All right, we're back. We got, I affectionately call him DS, Dan Skidmore, episode 93 of Pick Up the Six podcast. And here we are, man, almost 100 later. We're down the road a little bit. We're both wiser, handsomer for sure since the last time we talked. There's no doubt. What's up, brother?
Hey, well, how do you earn that wisdom?
Just life experiences, I think.
That's right. Some time on planet.
Yep.
Time on planet. Good reps, bad reps, lessons learned. And I'm happy to be back with you.
Time in terrain, right? Like is one way to think about the way in which you earn those experiences, man. I'm always pumped and we get to hang out and talk like this. You know, our paths cross digitally a lot, right? Just keeping an eye on each other's journeys and adventures. It's one of those benefits of the social media platforms that we're on. We can just sort of, man, keep an eye as to what we're up to. And dude, you were on a Facebook live last week, dragging a sled around while walking your dog. And I was like, get after it. And you're like, let's get on the show. And I was like, hell yeah, man, let's get on the show. And so here we are.
Heck yeah, man. I love sled work. It's been one of my staples for years, and just dragging things is hugely important. And, you met me through rucking, and
Yep.
which is another primordial skill that we have to have. Pick up something, throw it on your back, but having the capacity to drag something, I almost wrote this post. If you give me a second to tell this quick story.
Please
about
do it.
Man,
the platform is yours.
Well, dragging Skedcos with casualties on it is largely part of our training, especially with pararescue guys. But one time that it became hugely apparent to me was my brother and I were hunting, and we were sitting in a same tree together, sharing a bow. He shoots one, boom, it goes down. Actually, I don't really remember which deer that we shot that took the right turn and went down into a valley.
Oh boy!
But we had two deer. One was easy to recover. The other one, it took us a long time to get down to it. And then we ended up dragging it together up this hill. And it was just incredibly challenging pulling something. And so how do you get strong? Pick up stuff, carry it, pick up stuff, put it over your head, or just drag it behind you. And so it's another alternate form of cardio, because I hate being on a hamster wheel. You won't find me on it. Nobody ever rode to the fight unless they were like Vikings, which you can recreate that if you want to,
Right.
if you're down with that. But man, just like dragging a body through the woods or just a bag of bricks can do wonders for you. So if you haven't gotten on a sled, pushing, pulling backwards, forwards, and sideways can do incredible things for your fitness.
You can do incredible things without having to expend a lot of resources and without having to have the fanciest equipment. So part of what I love about your message is like find opportunities in the moment to put yourself in a little bit of stress, but like, dude, go get a tow cable and a carabiner and something heavy to drag behind you, right? Like cowboy up, man, get a bag of sand and a bag that can be pulled in the grass without ripping apart. Rock and roll.
Yeah.
But just that feel
also a tire,
that thing, tire. right?
A tire works really well, and this stems from a lot of my knowledge training wise and strength training wise comes from the conjugate method. So the West Side Barbell guys, and they're huge in sled drags. And every step you take, you're essentially loading that leg like a quarter squat and then driving hard off that front foot. And so you're getting a lot of really good volume in, but it's not as taxing, and it's really healthy for your hips, your back, your quads, and more of a restorative exercise than everything else that you do. So it adds to that general physical preparedness and the cardio aspect.
So you're not necessarily using sort of the sled drag day as a, next in line of my strength training, right? Intentional strength training is happening under the bar, right? Doing specific lifts with intentionality, with measurement. But you're using it more as one, I think it's a bit of a mental game with yourself, right? To go do that. But then also, like to your point on flexibility, right? On a bit of a recovery, and also there's something to me about saying, instead of just walking the dog, I'm going to add this other element to it. Instead of just mowing the lawn, I'm going to throw the ruck on to add this extra just element to it. There's something in that little mental win too of doing something extra like that.
Yeah, and all of training is connected, right? So everything should have a place. I like to lift. I like barbell stuff. I've cultivated that over years. But then you also have to have the conditioning piece or the recovery aspects. I don't necessarily agree with anybody when they say, "Oh, I went for a recovery run," because everything you do competes for recovery, right? And everything you don't do competes for that recovery as well. So if you're just squatting all the time, you're never giving yourself, a chance to build on that. If you're doing push-ups or bench pressing or doing too much all the time without fixing, restorative patterns, but also training all the time to continually upgrade your system, you're leaving money on the table, really. Right. When it boils down to it. And I love the sled because it's more of a restorative. You can change directions with it, pull it backwards, which is awesome for your knees and your hips. And so, if guys have issues, I think we talked some about backwards walking, but that's a great opportunity to put it in. And I'll actually do a lot of sled work, like as my warm-up sets as well, while I'm squatting, hey, do some kind of a variation in between my heavy sets. So it just keeps you moving, keeps the heart rate going, and keeps you engaged on a training session.
He's Dan Skidmore. I'm Brian Jodice. This is Pick Up the Six. Thanks to those of you watching us on NGBN, watching us on YouTube, or listening on Spotify or all the other platforms. Really excited about what this TV network is going to look and feel like in 2024. We're getting ready to launch then. Our show is going to be very similar to what you're used to in the conversations we've had, but a little different in how we package it. So continue to stay with us as we do just that. I also think you like, I like knowing you're out there doing it. I also like being the guy that as you're sort of walking the dog, and if you've got the weight on or if you're pulling the sled, the average guy is driving by like, wait, what is that guy doing?
Yeah, I had that exact thing happen this morning, and it was so funny. Like the neighbors just get to, figure it out, and everybody's got something to think about it. But
have you seen the Instagram of the guy? He's like talking about being the alpha dad, where his garage door comes up and he's front squatting 275, or he's walking down the street with the yoke squat on. I'm like, that's great. I could see you and that guy getting along really well.
I think so. And I think there's a lot of other dads out there, or guys out there that are looking to put that on. Every neighborhood has it. But the best thing to do is get all those guys in one place, or, hey, offer it to bring along other guys instead of just being that alpha lone wolf. Right. Like, I think that it's way better to invite people into it and try to grow that pack, rather than just trying to floss on everybody about what you can do. So,
yeah,
invite
the
them out.
That's the beauty of the way in which F3 was constructed. And these guys have stood up these, their fitness groups, really their men's leadership clubs, right? Like in their local communities, at their local schools, at their churches, in their neighborhoods. And there's something about, listen, I'm going to be pushing harder for longer in the proximity of other people doing the same than sometimes if I'm left to my own devices. It's an easier, I take a little bit longer rest here. but there's
Yeah.
something about when you're pushing with some folks that you're aligned with, that I don't know, man, just, and it's just, you're testing yourself, you're testing your friends around you. Right.
Yeah.
We need that. We got to seek it a little bit too.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, it comes into training environments, but if you're the top guy in your garage and it's the top out of one, like you're only going to get as big
I
as
said
your
the
own.
garage PR again.
Yeah, that's great. But you're like a fish, like if you can only get as big as your fishbowl. Same thing with the jujitsu thing is like, if you're the top guy, if you're always only smashing everybody, you only get so much out of that. And then it gets into the ego thing, and then you start tricking yourself of how great you really are. So I'm a big fan of, going outside your network, and training with people way outside your level, to remind yourself how awesome you really are. And there's value in competition with that, but at the same time, like bringing those other guys along, right? Leave no man where you found him. But that's part of it. So keep that in mind if you are a single warrior out there just flexing in your neighborhood, like, and try to force multiply a little bit.
That's right. More with Dan Skidmore. Quick break. We'll be right back. Attention, gentlemen of distinction. Introducing NGBN.TV, the television network designed exclusively for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Your go-to destination for entertainment that speaks to you, inspires you, and celebrates the incredible journey of manhood. And here's the exciting news. NGBN.TV is coming to Roku, Apple TV, Amazon, and your favorite mobile devices. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, seeking self-improvement, or just looking for a good laugh, NGBN.TV has got you covered. Entertainment, inspiration, brotherhood. Coming soon to Roku, Apple TV, Amazon, and mobile devices. NGBN.TV, where men thrive. All right, brother, we're back. I want to talk about this. I saw you on dirt bikes, motorcycles, traversing the streets and markets and countryside of Morocco. So you're stateside now, right? Folks remember from our last conversation, you and your family spend time traveling around. You've got some hotel properties and ventures, and you spend a lot of time in Morocco. It's become a home away from home. But you just sort of wrapped up one of those sort of Dan Skidmore adventures. So tell us, man, what that journey was like, why you were doing it, what was going on. I mean, it looked incredible.
All right. So 2019, my wife and I, we moved out to Morocco, Marrakesh. It's North Africa, just south of Spain and Portugal. And we renovated a boutique hotel in Morocco. And my experience there has been that it's very safe. It's culturally an Islamic country. But man, like I've really found a home there and made some great friends, learned a lot about the culture, the language, and just north to south. I mean, there's endless adventure to be had. And I wanted to share that experience with the world, right? Anybody that has that itch of like, hey, I want to see what else is out there besides like my small town. That, America's wonderful, but you got to venture out and broaden the horizons. And so we wanted to be a place that people could come and organize their trip and have a peace of mind that it could be a safe time, and put some trust in there. So that's what we've done in Morocco. And then through the GoRuck community, I've met a lot of people who are into doing weird stuff and also challenge themselves. And so made some awesome friends out in Des Moines, Iowa, and a couple of events that we had run over the course of the last couple of years. And then one of the other cadre hit me up and was like, hey, I'm coming to Morocco. I'm doing this race. It's going to be crazy. It's called the Monkey Run. And it's basically a ride. They take you way south. They pick you up. They bus you all day long. It was like a 16-hour bus ride into the Sahara Desert. You pull up to this place and they give you a 50cc motorcycle. And it's not really a dirt bike. It's like a little chopper, but it's a 50cc, monkey bike is what you call
it.
Right.
That's why it's the Monkey Run.
You look like a monkey clapping tambourines as you're riding this thing along. And they say, hey, well, this is your adventure. And you can take 7 days. We're not going to give you the route. We're not going to tell you how to get back, but you got to get from point A to point B, which is back in the city that we picked you up at another location that they send you. And so, hey, figure it out. 3, 2, 1, go. And so my team, we ended up being it was 4 of us, me, Corey, Matt, and Mike. And I knew these guys kind of well before. I'd put them through the test and put them through the physical ringer at some level, but I didn't really know what to expect. And international travel is always different. They didn't speak a lot of Arabic or French. And so, I was going to actually, I didn't even know that I was going to be able to do it with these guys. So they booked their flights, they booked everything out, they arranged everything. And then as my calendar kind of figured itself out, I was like, hey, this is kind of looking like I might be able to join in. So literally the night before they are supposed to launch, I go with them to this meet and greet, and there's, hanging out, and I'm like, hey, well, I'm here, I can do it. The schedule all worked out. So I signed up the night before we were supposed to leave. Kind of a last minute thing. Went home, packed my bag because it's already all packed. It took me about 6 minutes to get the rest of the stuff that I needed. And we were off on our adventure.
All right. So the 4 of you guys, right? You take the 16-hour bus ride down there. What's that thing like?
So Morocco is shaped very similarly and latitudinally to California. So you get a lot of different terrain, north to south. So you go through the Atlas mountain range, and then you just keep going. You eventually hit the desert, right? And you get into the Sahara Desert, where there's like big sand dunes, all as far as you can see, like rolling big orange sand. And so it's pretty crazy in terms of just terrain changes is one thing, but then the cultural landscape changes too, because you see the Berbers in the mountains, which is, if you've never researched the Berber tribes and what's going on with them through the decades, it's kind of an interesting history and cultural thing there. But seeing the changes from the north to the south was just really interesting. And I was also absolutely ready to be out of that van at the end of it. Yep. I had a swollen knee issue. I just injured my knee doing jujitsu and had some bursitis, essentially swelling on the knee, and it just got exponentially worse on the drive down. And so I was ready to get out.
Yeah. So are you guys two-man teams, right? How are you? No. How are you? The 4 of you are together.
Man, if you put 2 guys on that motorcycle, which we did at one very interesting spot, which I'd love to tell the story about. Yeah. But yeah, you got your own motorcycle and you're good to go there. Now, there were other teams as well. There were, I think there were 60 guys essentially. But it's not really a race. It's more of hey, this is going to be a boondoggle, figure it out and create your own adventure. And we had an idea that we were going to see as much as we could and cover some ground. So,
man, it's phenomenal. I'd like to see a movie of this or something, right? Just to see what sort of hijinks ensue. But tell me about the story of having to put 2 guys on one of these bikes. What kind of scenario were you in? What was going on?
So we had been driving for 2 days, basically. And when we start, you're just doing your route planning and terrain association and kind of planning out which direction you want to go. And everybody's going a different way. And I had already traveled to some of the parts, but I hadn't been through this gorge. And I didn't want to retrace any steps that I had already taken. I wanted to, see some new stuff along with these guys. And so we started in the south. We went up through what's called Dade's Gorge, and it's just this phenomenal cliff faces on both sides and just crazy terrain going through the Atlas Mountains. And we realized that at one point it was going to take us significantly longer than we wanted to invest in sitting on these motorcycles. And also you could get, uphill first gear, even downhill at full speed, you're only going about 55 kilometers an hour, which equals about 35 kilometers or 35 miles an hour. So it's slow going. So we did some math and realized that it was going to take us a significant amount of time to get around this mountain pass because there's only one way, one small road that was going to work out for us. And so I said, all right, guys, we want to get out to the beach, right? Our end state goal is we wanted to go surfing the last couple of days. So, desert to the ocean. That's the goal. And so as we're kind of planning this thing out, 2 days in, we're laying there and we say, well, what do you guys think? We can either struggle through this, or we can try to enlist the help of a local and have them pick us up in a van or a truck or whatever, maybe a semi or a bulldozer. We'll find somebody and load them up and basically go 2 or 3 times the speed to get way ahead. And which was going to be kind of a risky thing. And if you don't speak Arabic, like, you'd be SOL figuring this thing out. Well, luckily I took some classes and I got enough going on that we can work our way through this and problem solve it. And eventually we said, all right. So we had been driving about 2 hours, and then we start looking for, vans, trucks, planes, trains, and automobiles to help us along in our journey. The first guy that I found, he quoted us way too much. He wanted way too much money to do it. So he said, La shukran, which means no thank you, and kept on our way. About another 30 minutes of riding, we found this truck. And so I'm breaking it down, talking to this guy about what the plan would be. And he said, I can't do it through this area. There's police, right? And there's a police checkpoint. So he couldn't have guys in the back of his truck at the time. So we had to strategically stop, unload one motorcycle. And he wanted to do it this crazy way, which reminded me, I just read the book Gates of Fire again, the story of the 300 Spartans at the gates of Thermopylae.
Yeah.
Well, there's a story in there where Alexandros and they get left behind in this battle. And have you read the book?
No, but I'm just thinking back through like some history lessons and knowing some of the story, but like this part is not something I know.
Right?
But yeah.
Okay, so the movie is one thing, but the story of these soldiers is incredibly. It's just moving, right? Stephen Pressfield is a phenomenal author. The story, though, the Spartans leave this guy behind, this young warrior, and he says, "No, I'm going to war." Right, and so he chases these guys. He basically
leave him behind,
along.
meaning like leave him back home. Like, you're not coming to the battle with us.
He was too young at the time. He was too young. Yeah. So anyways, they get on a boat and they leave. Basically the boat captains double cross these guys, kick them out of the boat halfway. And I saw this happening with our trucker that we had just loaded up these motorcycles with. And I was like, nah, this is not going to happen this way. Like the whole scene was replaying in my head. So anyways, Brian, read the book. It'll change your life.
On it.
So the guys had to get out of the car, load up 2 guys, 2, full-size men, 200-pound men, 200 plus, because these guys are real men. And they had to get past this little truck or this little police checkpoint on these little motorcycles. The guy pulls ahead. We load up and we pull ahead past the police checkpoint and then load everybody back up and then go over this crazy mountain pass that I was literally really, really scared for my life that we were going to tumble off the side, because they just had an earthquake there in Morocco. So, the ground's a little loose as it is. But yeah, wild times. But moral of the story is, don't be afraid to get on the back of another dude's motorcycle when you got to save a couple hours of time in the seat.
I don't mean it this way, but I'm envisioning Harry and Lloyd riding into Aspen, essentially that size of that little bike, right? I get 70 miles of the gallon on this hog.
Smaller than a Vespa. Yeah. About half the size of a Vespa. You've had 2 pairs of gloves this whole time.
Yeah. It's the Rockies.
Exactly.
It was like that, but just through Morocco. One more quick break. We'll be back with Dan Skidmore. I want to hear about, there are any other crazy life lessons learned from this trip. We'll be right back. Pick Up the Six is sponsored by Mudgear. Mudgear serves the unleashed with gear for the modern hybrid athlete that's made tougher. They've created strong, functional performance gear like their performance shirts, shorts, and socks. I wear Mudgear on the regular. Whether it's for a road race, an obstacle adventure, or a ruck, Mudgear can help you gear up for extreme performance. Go to mudgear.com, use the code PUT6, and save 15% off today. Amino Vital is on a mission to provide the highest quality amino acid-based nutritional products to all athletes aspiring to improve their conditioning and performance. They are a partner of our efforts here at Pick Up the Six, and I use their product before, during, and after workouts. They offer the purest and highest quality of amino acid products that help hydration and recovery. Check them out at amino-vital.com and use the code PUT6 to save 20% off today. All right, so amazing story about putting two guys on that bike, making your way through. How long does it take you, right? Do we get to the ocean and do we get our surf on? And then just, there's got to be some, even in that quick amount of time, some sort of life-changing moments, lessons learned.
Yeah. So luckily, like, we problem solved through that day. We ended up, going all day. It actually worked out perfectly, but through that night, we ended up falling into a storm. We said, hey man, we can't push through this. We needed to wait till the morning to push way ahead. And we just saw some beautiful scenery throughout. But then the next day we had to, come up with a plan, get on the bikes early, and we got right to it. We spent like 14 hours on our bikes the next day, getting to our next location. And so the route worked out perfectly. The next day we hung out. Then we eventually made it out to the ocean. We completed everything that we wanted to do. Because if you're going to dive the plan, you're going to plan the dive and then dive the plan. That's right. Because when things get hard, you try to steer away from it, but you got to stay the course. And it wasn't without, emotional, pain-driven. We're natural guys. Like, you're going to get hungry, you're going to get thirsty, you're going to get irritable. And so we encountered that. And I recently wrote about that. And it was about 10 hours into this long day on a bike. And they were like, hey man, like, this sucks. Like, we need to stop. We're not having fun at all. But talking to each other off the ledge and staying calm, and just pressing forward, and taking a minute, drink some water, fuel up, and buckle down. And there's a lot of little intangibles that we could talk about. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is, like, if you're going to go out and do stuff, hard things with, a group, mm-hmm. You want to do a little bit of pre-testing, right? Yeah. That's why there's that's why there's a selection course.
You knew going into it with these guys because you'd seen them perform in some other avenues before.
I did. They had at least done a 12-hour event. They've actually done way more. They've done a 24-hour event, walking on their feet. And so those little things add up to the big things, but they got to test themselves. And so I wouldn't have necessarily wanted to just like throw myself into hard situations where somebody could break down. And you saw that with the other teams. Like, guys are coming in and friendships lost, and they just like didn't do that well. I think people broke up on the trip. But man, like, just like
testing ground, man. It's a testing ground to find out sometimes.
Well, and every day is a testing ground, right? Because every day is selection. But that's what separates, the special operations from everybody else. And then the tier one guys to the next level is continually upgrading. And so, putting yourself through those courses, right? And it's not just, hey, we made it, or we've gotten to this point and then I can rest on my laurels. But, hey, you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, like, continually training so that you can hit that next trip. You can always be sharpening your skills. And I had a little bit of faith in the guys at the time, but it was just another training trip for everybody. Yeah. And we all walked out of it with like stronger resolve.
Joey Baker and I talked about this on a recent episode where, and I think there's parallels between sort of just our regular everyday life and then what he was going through, trying to go through a selection, which is just a big, long event. But like, check this out. So like, oftentimes we'll feel so overwhelmed with everything we have going on that you get so focused on all these big, massive things you have to do that you forget that there are incredible wins throughout the process that can keep you moving forward. So in his case, he's like, dude, I'm doing this 24 to 48 hour event. I can't think about finishing the event. I'll never make it. I have to think about finishing the next thing in front of me. There's a lot of guys that go through the level of training you've gone through, or guys that are going through a hell week if they're in buds in the Navy SEALs. And it's like, you can't make it through the week on day one. You can get kicked out of the week for damn sure. But can you make it through this next movement? And if something's going on in your life, or if something's happening where you feel like it's pushing you off your big goals, can you get a win along the way that just is a checkpoint to keep you moving? We ain't going to get all the way to the end today. That's not possible. But can you find something, right, that gets you a win as you're going? And then I think back to your point about dive the plan, Tony Romo, or not Tony Romo, Tony Robbins. Tony Romo uses pretty good analogies too, I suppose, on a broadcast. Tony Robbins used this analogy of if you leave LA on a plane for Hawaii, and if you get pushed off course by 1 degree, which doesn't seem like much, and you don't adjust your plan because you got pushed off a little bit, you'll miss the island by like 1,000 miles. You got to have a plan,
Yeah.
but you got to be able to move when something happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, you're always course correcting. And I like, thinking about anybody's selection, whatever they're going through, whether it's life or, military stuff or just, having hard days and events. Like I've gone, meal to meal, but I've also gone step to step, like, hey, I got to put one foot in front of the other. And sometimes, like, especially with the, go ruck selection that guys try to do, man, it's treat it like a mountain. And if it's one foot in front of the other, like, hey, eventually your body's going to break down.
Yeah.
And if it does, hey, well, then you didn't go any further. And I think that's what happened to Joe a couple times, but he's grown a lot out of that. And you grow through failures as well, no doubt about it. But stacking those little wins, and one step turns into another. If you don't look backwards, eventually you turn around and like you've covered some serious ground. And then that momentum, it builds. And so, that can take you just like, hey, we're going through the holidays, right? How are you going to stay consistent? How are you going to stay motivated? Well, one day at a time, one morning at a time, getting those reps in. And like, I'm a big fan of waking up and doing something. It doesn't have to be crazy. But what happens is we start moving a little bit, then the grease starts rolling and we start getting warm. And it's like, oh man, this feels good. And then you can just keep it going and you don't want to stop.
Bad habits can snowball. Good habits can snowball. Joey told me, he said, man, I was trying to get stronger. I was doing all this training. I felt like I was plateauing. And he said, DS gave me a valuable piece of advice, which was do less. He said, I need you to do less. What did that mean?
Just, okay. So if you're doing all that stuff, just like I said, you're competing for recovery and you're only recovering when you're sleeping and eating. And so, if you do all that work, but then don't address the other things that are critical for growth, then you're going to just be digging a hole and never putting anything back in it. Right. We want to be elevating, not just constantly digging down and finding less and less every time you go back. And so I had that very distinctive conversation with Joe and he was crushing it. But like I said, hey, how much do you sleep last night? Like 4 hours. Okay. Well, instead of doing this extra work, like take a nap. You're going to feel way better. You're going to be recharged. And so, it's like that scene, the guys are surfing and they're like, do less. Well, you got to do something. Right. But you can't just lay there. But yeah, man, that was a big point for Joe is like addressing the recovery and everybody should look at it.
Yeah, dude, it's a busy time, man. Holiday season comes up. It's easy for us to get overwhelmed with events and family and gathering. But one thing I've been trying to focus on and just have my brain focused on going into some downtime is that's time to recharge the battery, but it's also some time to just reflect a little bit, like look back on your last year and think about now, what do you want 24 to look like? And if you're use Jan 1 as a reset sometime, or just a framework of, all right, this is things I want to make a priority in 24. What kind of stuff are you doing over the next few weeks just to keep training, but also to be reflecting and looking ahead a little bit?
That's a great question. I space out hard things like big lifts, right? And that's part of the conjugate method that I do is I'm going to reattack max effort work every so often, right? So I can get those wins or I can just do a gauge on progress throughout the year. Doesn't need to be every month, but I'm going to set those little goals. Maybe it's like the repetition tests that I'll do. So, hey, I'm going to bench press 225 for as many reps as possible without stopping. That's an NFL combine standard.
Yep.
So I've got a goal. Hey, and I've wanted to improve that over time. Everybody should. And then you can stack up and see how you do, with Tony Romo or whatever. That's the guy, right? He's a football player.
Tony Romo was a football player. Yeah.
Okay.
I would care to bet He was not a heavy 225 bencher, would be my guess at quarterback. But
so it's funny. So I'm here in the land of the Georgia Bulldogs. They got robbed. It should have been in the national championship for the third time. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But it was a funny thing during that monkey run. We stopped out in Marrakesh with my buddies. We went in to do a little workout at my home gym, the muscle madrasa there in Marrakesh. And I said, hey guys, well, what are we going to do? We're going to get a little pump session. So we did the max effort 225 test because it was a quick thing. Like,
yeah,
see how you're doing today. And then as we were talking later in the day, we start looking up, hey, how did this guy do? How did this guy do on the NFL Combine? And then we realized that they don't even make the quarterbacks do it, which I thought was totally lame.
Yeah, I would like to know if they can do it.
Of course they can. But it's like, return on investment, whatever. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But I used little tests like that on certain lifts or, a distance carried or whatever it is throughout the year. So I can keep working on that. Right. It's not these random challenges that, it's always going to be hard, but you always come back to like a couple benchmarks that you can say, hey, I'm going to do this once a month, or I'm going to in a quarter, 3 months from now, maybe 4 months from now, I'm going to retest and see what my progress has been. So I do that a lot and just as a progress check.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dude, what else is going on, man? I know you got ruck wraps. So I'd love for you to plug stuff you got going, things you're working on, ways that our audience and listeners and watchers, man, can just get connected to you and support things you got going.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We rebranded from Ruck Wrap, which started off as floss bands, right? Compression for recovery, which if you've had any joint pain, ankle pain, if you knee issues, swelling, basically reducing swelling, pushing your blood flow and trying to handle inflammation, because inflammation can be good, but it can also limit you. And if you look at Donnie Thompson once said, and Donnie Thompson is one of 2 guys to have ever set a 3,000 pound or more powerlifting total in 3 lifts, 3,000 pounds. Do the math on that, right? This is a superhuman guy that figured out that, and he was in his 40s when he did it. He had to figure out how to train smarter than everybody else, right? And he said, I'll quote Donnie, he said, when people figure out compression, they're going to say that it's cheating. So hey, why not, right? Why not use a tool that can help you stay in the game for longer, that can get more out of your body, right? And so we used floss bands for a really long time, but then eventually wanted to add to the toolbox, that's your backpack, and put positive things in there, because I carry around my gym bag. Well, I need bands in there because I do a lot of band training to help support all the lifts that I do, or add bands to my barbell for accommodating resistance, which is accelerating through the top of a lift that's going to help you build speed and power and stability. And so we rebranded the Bulletproof bands, and Joe and I, Joe Baker, we didn't, man, I actually told Joe that I was going to talk to you, and it's so funny that it's coming up. But Joe's been my main man on that. When he was looking at starting his training group, and throughout the entire process, I was like, man, I want to make you bulletproof. Yeah. And he ran with that. And that's a huge goal. It's like, if you have that bulletproof mindset, right, well, you can tone your body so much, and you can work on all the little things that very common, traditionally, things that go wrong, right? Ankles, knees, shoulders, neck, right? But if you can dial those little things in to be more resilient, that's bulletproofing. That's just bulletproofing the body, and then start bulletproofing the mind and work through that. So, we've got bulletproof bands, we've got the floss bands, we've got single loop rubber bands that you can train with, whether you're on the road or in your home gym, and just trying to up the education on that. And get guys stronger. It's adding tools to the toolbox.
Yep. That's awesome, man. Yeah, dude, we had a great conversation. And he's even sent some lifts my way that have made me feel stronger and more flexible, more fit in a very quick amount of time by folding in. And they're like 3 lift circuits, man. A1, good. AB, 3 lift circuit, boom. You can be in and out in 30 minutes, get a great workout in. So I was grateful for that because I know you were a big part of sort of training him up in that. Bro, this has been fun, man. I'm glad we got a chance to do this. We got to come back
really appreciate
and keep it going.
Hey, every 100 or so episodes, but I really appreciate you having me on and reach out in the morning, and I just do those live videos. I should do more often because social media is so toxic, but also there's so much positivity that can come out of it, and just connecting for a little bit and sharing some stories and hopefully helping somebody else along the way, like giving some inspiration to keep training. Like no matter what they got going on, like you got to take care of your physical being, and everything else will snowball into the positive, right? We don't want to regress. And if you have regressed a little bit, like all it takes is that next first step, positivity, getting back after it.
That's right. All right, brother. Good to see you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brian.
He's Dan Skidmore. I'm Brian Jodice. That's been Pick Up the Six. We'll see you guys next time.